There's a part of you that dies every time you do it, but you won't notice it right away, because the death is silent, slow, invisible, like a leak in the hull of a ship, undetected at first, but fatal if left unchecked. And by the time you realize you're sinking, you've already drowned in shame. Masturbation is not just physical release, it's spiritual leakage, an unholy transaction where moments of pleasure are exchanged for eternal fragments of your soul, and you won't even know what you've lost until your peace is gone, your focus is shattered, your purpose feels hollow, and your prayers start to echo with silence. The world told you it's normal, natural, everyone does it. But what if that's the greatest lie ever whispered? What if what you call relief is actually surrender? Not to God, not even to yourself, but to something darker, something ancient, something that feeds not on your flesh, but on your weakness. This is not about guilt, it's about gravity. What's being pulled from your spirit every time you release in lust is more valuable than gold. Your energy, your authority, your clarity, your ability to hear God. C.S.LEWIS once said, "The safest road to hell is the gradual one, the gentle slope soft underfoot, without sudden turnings." Masturbation is that road, paved in comfort, lined with secrecy, and guarded by spirits who smile every time you fall again, because they don't need to possess you if they can just drain you. This isn't just a habit, it's a war. And if you're not aware of the drain, then you're already losing. But you're already losing, then you're already losing. The secret battlefield, where the war for your soul truly begins. The most dangerous battlefield isn't out there, it's in here. In your mind. In your desires. In the choices you make when no one's watching. People imagine spiritual warfare as dramatic confrontations, exorcisms, rituals, miracles. But the real war begins in silence, behind closed doors when you're alone with your temptations. It doesn't start with demons shouting, it starts with a whisper, just this once. No one will know. Masturbation becomes the devil's playground, because it disguises sin as self-care. It tricks you into believing that what feels natural must be harmless. But what if the thing that feels safest is actually the most spiritually dangerous? That's how the enemy operates. Not with obvious evil, but with comfort that slowly kills conviction. C.S.LEWIS captured it best in the Screwtape Letters, where he describes how demons don't need to tempt you into great crimes. They just need to keep you distracted, passive. And masturbation does exactly that. It sedates your spirit. It removes urgency from your calling. It convinces you that feeling good is better than becoming great. In the secret moments, you're not just fighting hormones, you're fighting for the integrity of your soul, because every act done in isolation forms the architecture of your identity. If you build your private life on lust, shame, and escape, your public life will eventually collapse, no matter how polished it looks. The battlefield is spiritual, but it bleeds into the physical. Depression, anxiety, weakened drive, and broken relationships aren't random. They're fallout. Masturbation may seem like a private habit, but it creates public patterns, inconsistent behavior, a fractured sense of purpose, and a heart that can't feel God. Understand this. Demons don't need possession when they can win through permission, and the easiest way to get that permission, through repeated, hidden compromise. They don't knock down the door, they wait for you to open it yourself, one habit at a time. So where does the war begin? Not in a church, not on a battlefield. It begins when you're in your room, your screen lit, your soul unguarded, and a voice inside whispers, "This doesn't matter." That's the lie, and believing it is how you start losing a war you don't even know you're in. The pleasure trap, what you're really trading in the moment of release. In the heat of the moment it feels like a win, a few seconds of euphoria, a release of pressure. But what if that moment is costing you far more than you know? Every time you give in to the urge, you're not just releasing fluid, you're trading away spiritual currency, the energy that fuels your clarity, creativity, discipline, and divine authority. It's a divine resource, and it was never meant to be wasted in isolation. The seed inside you isn't just biological, it's symbolic. It holds the blueprint of legacy, the fuel of vision. But when you spill it for nothing, you're making a spiritual transaction, one where the cost is invisible, but the consequences are lasting. Masturbation feels private, harmless, but each climax takes something. It leaves you a little more tired, a little more foggy, a little more unmotivated. That fire you once had to build, to grow, to lead dampened. Not because God has turned away from you, but because you voluntarily poured your spiritual power into a temporary fix. Think about it. Kings don't waste their wealth on cheap thrills. Warriors don't drain their strength before battle. But when you give yourself to lust, you step out of your divine posture and into a lower version of yourself, one that can be manipulated, distracted, and controlled. And here's the terrifying truth. Every act of self-pleasure in lust is an altar, and something always takes the off. Demons don't need to attack you if you willingly hand over your power. This is the pleasure trap, where you think you're satisfying yourself, but you're actually weakening the very core of who you were created to be. You're trading peace for pleasure, vision for a dopamine hit, legacy for lust. It's not about shame, it's about value, because what you're losing is irreplaceable. You're meant to be a vessel of divine power, not a slave to temporary sensation, and the more you waste that power in private, the less you'll have to walk in purpose in public. Don't be deceived. That moment of pleasure has a price, and the longer you keep paying it, the more expensive it becomes. 3. The demon in the dark, who's really watching when you think you're alone. There's a lie that gets whispered to you every time you're alone. No one's watching. It's just you. But that's the setup, because in the spiritual realm there is no such thing as privacy. When you close the door, turn off the lights, and reach for your secret, you're not alone. You've entered a spiritual courtroom, and demons are taking notes. Masturbation, especially when tied to lustful fantasies or pornography, isn't just a personal act, it's a spiritual broadcast. Your actions in the dark emit frequencies, signals, invitations, and spirits respond. Not all spiritual warfare is loud and dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, like the slow drip of poison in a cup, unnoticed, but deadly. Each time you give in, you open a small door, one that tells the enemy, you have access to me through this. Repeated sin becomes consent in the realm of spirits. It's not about perfection, it's about pattern. When you repeatedly fall into lust, a demonic pattern is established, a stronghold, a legal right. The Bible says resist the devil and he will flee from you. But what happens when you entertain him instead? He doesn't just stay, he builds a home. Demons don't need to possess you to control you. They just need influence. And nothing grants them more consistent access than unrepented, habitual sin done in secret. This is why temptation always escalates. What was once a mild image becomes a craving for something darker. Because demonic spirits don't just want your attention, they want your progression. They're building bondage, one private failure at a time. And here's the harsh truth. The more you do it alone, the more you isolate yourself spiritually. Prayer becomes harder. Worship feels dull. Your spirit becomes numb. Not because God moved away, but because you gave space to something else. You think it's just your hand, but it's your authority, your discipline, your calling that's being choked. And the spirits that watch don't blink. They feed. So next time you're tempted to believe no one sees, remember this. The enemy is always watching because he knows your weakness better than you do. But so does God, and he's waiting to see what choice you make in the silence. Rewiring your spirit, how lust reshapes your mind and identity. Lust doesn't just live in your body, it rewrites the code of your mind, and worse, it poisons the blueprint of your spirit. Every time you indulge in lustful acts like masturbation, your brain undergoes a neurological shift. Dopamine, the reward chemical, floods your system, not as a gift from God, but as a counterfeit thrill that comes with a silent cost. It's not the chemical itself that's evil, it's the loop it creates. You train your brain to chase arousal, not intimacy. Pleasure, not purpose. Images on a screen become more familiar than faces in your life. And soon your soul begins to respond to pixels more than people. That's when the damage begins. You start to detach, emotionally, spiritually, relationally. You start to isolate, and isolation is the devil's playground. But this rewiring goes deeper than just brain science. Lust corrupts the spiritual compass within you. It bends your internal alignment away from the things of heaven and toward the cravings of flesh. You were made to reflect God's image, disciplined, clear, creative, connected. But when you bow to lust, that image gets distorted. You start to forget who you are. Your spiritual identity gets buried beneath shame, confusion, and apathy. This is how demons keep you powerless, not by attacking your body, but by hijacking your desires. You start identifying with your addiction. You say, I'm just weak, I'll never change, it's just how I cope. But those are not your thoughts, they're implanted lies. Lust doesn't just change what you do, it changes what you believe about yourself. But here's the truth. You were never designed to be ruled by urges. You were built for dominion, not your mind was meant to be renewed, not rewired by sin. Every moment of resistance rewrites your spiritual DNA. Every no to lust is a yes to clarity. And every time you break the cycle, you reclaim a piece of your identity that was stolen. You don't fight lust just to be good. You fight it to remember who you really are. So 5. The slow death of purpose. Signs you're being spiritually drained. You won't see the drain right away. It's not loud. It doesn't come with flashing warnings or explosions. It comes quietly, like a thief in the night, stealing your fire, your vision, your edge. Masturbation may feel like a private act, but the consequences echo through your spirit like ripples across eternity. The first sign is emotional. You wake up tired, not because your body lacks rest, but because your soul lacks purpose. Tasks that once felt meaningful now seem burdensome. Conversations feel shallow. Your heart isn't in anything anymore, and you don't even know why. Next comes spiritual numbness. Prayer becomes mechanical. Worship feels awkward. Scripture doesn't move you like it used to. It's not that God has gone silent. It's that your spirit signal is jammed. Every time you give in to lust, it's like pouring sand into the gears of your connection with heaven. Then arrives mental dullness. Clarity fades. Decisions become difficult. Your mind feels sluggish. Your attention fractured. You struggle to concentrate. Not because you're lazy, but because your internal compass is spinning wildly. Discipline starts to decay. Focus begins to evaporate. This isn't procrastination. It's a symptom of depletion. The fourth sign is lack of drive. Your ambition weakens. You no longer dream boldly. You hesitate, delay, retreat. That lion inside you, silenced, because the seed that should have fertilized vision was spilled on the altar of lust. What could have built your future was wasted in the name of momentary pleasure. And finally, increased self-hatred. Not just guilt, but disgust. A deepening sense of I'm not who I was meant to be. Shame starts building walls between you and others. You isolate, not because you want to, but because you believe you're no longer worthy of connection, love, or leadership. These are not coincidences. They are symptoms of a spiritual hemorrhage. The enemy doesn't always attack with fire. Sometimes he just lets you drain yourself, bit by bit, click by click, release by release. And by the time you realize your purpose is dying, you've already become a ghost of the man you were created to be. But the good news is this: if you're still breathing, the war isn't over. 6. The new Babylon. How society trains you to self-destruct. The Babylon of old never truly died. It just got smarter, flashier, and digital. We're living in its modern reincarnation, one not built with bricks and towers, but with screens, algorithms, and endless distractions. This new Babylon doesn't throw you into fiery furnaces or demand you bow to golden idols. It seduces you instead, subtly, relentlessly, and it does so by weaponizing your desires against you. The culture around you has been programmed to normalize lust, glorify indulgence, and ridicule self-control. Everywhere you look, there's a soft invitation to fall. An ad, a video, a song, a meme. The porn industry alone is a multi-billion-dollar machine designed to enslave your attention, hijack your biology, and quietly siphon off your spiritual power. It doesn't care about your soul. It feeds on your addiction. This is not freedom, it's engineered bondage. From social media influencers to streaming platforms, you are being trained, conditioned like a lab rat, to crave what kills you. And what's worse, you're being told it's self-expression. But there's nothing expressive about chains. You're not exploring yourself, you're losing yourself. And here's the darkest part. The world rewards your fall. Lose your virginity early, you're mature. Watch porn regularly, you're normal. Talk about abstinence or spiritual discipline, you're laughed at, called repressed or outdated. This is how Babylon wins. By making corruption look like culture and purity look like weakness. The devil doesn't need to show up in your room with horns and fire. He already owns the airwaves. He already owns the algorithm. And every time you open that app, every time you scroll, click, or linger a little too long, you're training yourself to kneel, not to God, but to the false gods of pleasure, distraction, and decay. Babylon doesn't break you with force. It convinces you to destroy yourself. And unless you unplug, discern, and discipline your soul, you won't even notice that your strength is bleeding out day after day, orgasm after orgasm, until there's nothing left to fight with. It doesn't want your body. It wants your surrender. And if you're not resisting, you're already obeying. 7. From shame to warfare. Breaking the cycle and reclaiming authority. Shame is Satan's leash. It doesn't just keep you bound. It convinces you that you belong in chains. Masturbation isn't just the act, it's the aftermath. That crushing silence. The guilt that floods your chest. The disgust in the mirror. And that inner whisper that says you'll never change. That's the trap. You sin. You feel shame. You isolate. And to escape that isolation, you sin again. It's not just addiction. It's a loop engineered by hell itself. And the more you try to fight it in your flesh, the tighter it coils around your soul. But here's the truth. You were never meant to fight this as a victim. You were born for war. You don't defeat this cycle by trying harder. You break it by standing up in spiritual authority. Not as a sinner begging for mercy, but as a son or daughter reclaiming territory. The authority you've been giving away to lust is the same authority hell fears. That's why it wants you in shame, because shame keeps warriors silent. Start here. Confess, not collapse. Speak the truth. Name the pattern. Shine light on what's been hiding in your dark. The enemy thrives in silence, but confession is confrontation. Next, fast, pray and war. Don't wait for your emotions to catch up. Discipline leads, feelings follow. Every time you resist, you're not just saying no to lust. You're saying yes to legacy, to clarity, to the kingdom within you. And when the shame comes knocking again, remind yourself, you're not dirty, you're in training. God's not ashamed of your fight. He's invested in your victory. This is war, not just against demons, but against the weaker version of you that hell created to survive in cycles. But you weren't born to survive. You were born to conquer. And every battle you win in private is a prophecy fulfilled in public. Authority isn't reclaimed when you feel ready. It's reclaimed the moment you decide that shame no longer gets the final word.
8.
Rise of the warrior. Your victory awakens generations. You were never meant to crawl through life burdened by secret chains. You were born a warrior. But the war isn't against flesh. It's against forces that want you spiritually castrated, powerless, passive, and addicted to your own destruction. Every time you conquer the urge, you don't just win for yourself. You send shockwaves through the generations behind you and the ones still to come. Because when you break the cycle of lust, you break more than a habit. You destroy a bloodline curse. You silence ancient voices, whispering addiction through your DNA. You say to the demons who tormented your father, "It ends with me." That's legacy. That's warfare. That's what rising means. Victory isn't always loud. Sometimes it looks like saying no at 2 a.m. when no one is watching. Sometimes it's deleting what you could have watched. Sometimes it's crying in silence, choosing holiness over hunger, and dying to your flesh one decision at a time. And heaven takes notice every time you do. You become dangerous when you're clean, because when you stop leaking your energy into darkness, God starts filling you with fire. You start walking differently, speaking differently. People feel your presence before you even speak. That's not charisma. That's spiritual authority, restored through obedience. Don't underestimate the ripple effect of your surrender. When a man rises, a family follows. When a family rises, a city notices. And when cities burn with purity, darkness trembles. Demons fear disciplined men, because they know a man who masters his appetite can't be bought. A man who doesn't need constant pleasure can carry eternal purpose. Your seed was never just about biology. It carries vision, destiny, calling. And when you stop wasting it on shadows, God plants it in soil that grows nations. So rise, not just for yourself, for the ones watching you silently, for the son who doesn't know yet, for the younger you that no one warned, for the woman praying for a real man, for the God who's waited on you to return. This is your hour, to break the silence, to kill the shame, to awaken the warrior, and to lead a generation back to holiness. With your scars as the proof, you made it out. Conclusion. You've seen the truth now, not the filtered, sanitized version that society spoon-feeds you, but the raw, eternal truth, that every time you give in to lust, you're giving up something sacred, something that belongs not just to you, but to your purpose, your future, and the generations God has assigned to your name. This was never just about your body. This was about your soul, because lust doesn't simply stain your thoughts. It steals your power. It cuts the connection between you and heaven, between what God has called you to be and what the enemy wants you to become. Every release feels small, but over time it becomes a river that empties your spirit. A man once on fire becomes a man always tired. A warrior becomes a wanderer. A chosen one becomes a chained one. And the worst part, you start believing that this is normal, that you're just human, that grace will cover the same fall 100 times. Yes, God is merciful, but grace was never a license to stay the same. It was the key to get out, and the door is still open. But you must choose. Choose to feel the discomfort of abstinence instead of the emptiness of indulgence. Choose to walk in divine clarity instead of spiritual confusion. Choose to become a vessel of light instead of a well for darkness to drink from. There will be nights where you shake, where the temptation is louder than your will, where the enemy whispers that falling is easier than fighting. But remember this, every no you whisper in the dark echoes like thunder in the spirit realm. Heaven hears it. Hell fears it. You're not weak, you're awakening. You're not dirty, you're under construction. You're not alone, you're on the path few dare to walk. And though that path is narrow, it leads to something the world can never give. Peace, power, presence. The kind of peace that lets you sleep without guilt. The kind of power that reshapes your entire atmosphere. The kind of presence that turns ordinary men into divine weapons. The choice is yours. Remain a slave to an unseen drain, or rise and become a gatekeeper of your legacy, a light in your bloodline, and a warrior in God's army. No more secrets, no more shame, no more surrendering your royalty for the taste of poison. There's a crown waiting, but you can't wear it with chains on your hands. So stand, turn off the screen, bury the addiction, and tell the enemy, not this time, not this body, not this soul, because you've seen the drain. Now it's time to shut it forever.